Hi, and welcome to the ICCE 2020 COPRI OSU Student Chapter booth. My name is Chris O'Day, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the research that I've been doing for my master's here at OSU. I've been working on the implementation of a stereo camera free surface measurement system in the OH Hinsdale Wave Research Lab. A little bit of personal background on myself. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I studied mechanical engineering at Cal Poly and am a second-year master's student of coastal engineering at Oregon State. For COPRI, I'm a part of the OSU student chapter and I'm part of the leadership board as the event coordinator. And I work as a graduate research assistant at the OH Hinsdale Wave Research Lab. A little bit more about the Hinsdale Wave Research Lab. It's located in Corvallis, Oregon on campus at Oregon State and is a NSF-funded NHERE facility, meaning that it works in conjunction with several other NSF-funded facilities around the U.S. studying natural hazards and their effects on the environment. We have two research facilities at Hinsdale, the large wave flume pictured on the right and the directional wave basin on the bottom of the slide there, both used for large-scale physical modeling and research for different ocean, coastal, and nearshore processes. We work in conjunction with several other universities and companies from all around the world. I'm going to be focusing more on the directional wave basin as that's where we've been doing most of the research for this project in. This wave basin is capable of creating three-dimensional wave fields by generating short and long period multi-directional waves. Some of the instrumentation that is used to generally measure the free surface are wire wave gauges, which are shown in the picture on the right there. And these are two wires sticking down into the water that measure the free surface elevation at that specific point. We can also use ultrasonic wave gauges, acoustic depth gauges, and these are all used with the data acquisition system. So you can put out multiple of these gauges at once and record at sampling rates of 10 kilohertz or more. So some of the limitations that these have are that they only measure the water surface where they're stationed. So you don't get an idea of what's going on three-dimensionally in the wave field. To do this, people put out an array of these wave gauges as shown in the picture so that they can see at different points around the specimens, which are the brown devices in this picture, what's going on with the wave field and infer what is happening at the actual specimen. So a lot of times when you're doing research, you won't actually be able to physically put a wave gauge at the specimen where you want to, as this could hinder what's going on with the specimen, or you just physically can't attach it to it. Also, a lot of framing is usually required to put this amount of wave gauges out, which can cause hydrodynamic disruptions and cause lots of reflections in the waves. So the research questions we have for this project are, can we three-dimensionally reconstruct the water surface in a laboratory environment? And if so, can we determine a methodology to spatially and temporally analyze three-dimensional wave data? To do this, we've chosen to use a stereoscopic reconstruction technique that uses multiple cameras from multiple different perspectives to reconstruct the scene in 3D. So in the figure on the right, you can see it's two different cameras looking at a water surface from different angles. And from these different angles, you can triangulate these pixels of the water surface. So to do this, you need to first calibrate the cameras to understand their intrinsic distortion parameters. and use these to be able to correlate and match pixels from either camera. This is extremely difficult for a water surface because you have lots of reflection and refraction of the scene going on, and the software can't always correlate and match these pixels perfectly. But once you've done this, you can convert from camera pixel coordinates to real world three-dimensional coordinates. And the software we've been using to do this is called WAS, or Wave Acquisition Stereo System, which is an open source pipeline that anyone can download at that URL for reconstructing three-dimensional open ocean waves. This was developed by Filippo Bergamasco and Alvise Benetazzo and tested and validated in many open ocean applications. A little bit more about our experimental setup. We used 2 GoPros mounted onto a frame shown in the picture on the right that filmed an area within a 6x6 meter frame shown on the left with wave gauges surrounding, used for validating the data we were getting from the cameras. So here's a picture of the framing with the wave gauges sticking down. The wave basin is emptied in this picture, but usually the wave gauges would be sticking into the water with lighting around the frames to help with the stereo reconstruction. Here is a data sample of the output data we've been getting from this. So on the left is the data overlaid over the video of breaking waves, and on the right is the three-dimensional net CDF output that comes from the software. So in the right, you can see the kind of the framing that are creating spikes in the middle of this data set, which is kind of an issue because this framing will make shadowing behind where it is in the field of view from the cameras. This is interpolated over, so it's smoothed out and you can kind of see it behind that middle spike as the waves pass through it. But in general, we're getting a pretty good stereo reconstruction profile of what's going on in the wave field. So we wanted to use wave gauge data to validate what we were getting from the stereo reconstruction. To do this, we were picking out a point in the stereo data where the wave gauge was in real world coordinates and then comparing this to what the wave gauge was actually recording. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the red line is the data from the wire wave gauge and the blue line is the data from the stereo reconstruction. And the stereo reconstruction is a little bit noisy and not consistent with what the wire wave gauge was measuring. It was also pretty dependent on where the wave gauge actually was lying in the field of view of the cameras, and the distance from the cameras seemed to affect the accuracy of this data a lot. Moving forward, instead of looking at specific points in the stereo data, we would like to analyze it spatially. The advantages this data set has is that it shows the entire 3D profile of what's going on with the water surface instead of just points. So we like to utilize that and analyze it in a spatial way that can be used in future research projects at the wave basin. We'd also like to try and reconstruct a larger area of the basin instead of just within the framing. The video in the bottom right shows kind of what's going on currently. We've been widening the angles of the cameras and trying to capture the entirety of the basin instead of a smaller area. And also we'd like to add more camera couples to be able to have multiple angles on the wave field and be able to reduce a shadowing effect of where the cameras aren't able to see. So if we had cameras on either side of the basin that were able to reduce the shadowing effect that is caused by different instrumentation or framing, and then mesh these data sets together. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Um, I'm more than happy to answer anything that you guys may want to know. And here are the references I used during my slide. Thank you for joining.